I love my breaking news. All right, and here we go. What's up, everyone? Clayton here. Good to see all of you on this show, Morning Invest, the only business morning show for real people, not Wall Street types. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor, entrepreneur, former television guy, spent many years in the TV business, and now I have one of my favorite co-hosts that I've ever had by my side. It's my 5-month-old mini pincher, Grover. He's here for the news this morning because we've got a lot to get to on the show today. We're going to be deep diving what's happening on the stimulus front. It is a mess. Republicans are a mess. There's over 20 different Republicans in the Republican caucus that do not want another bill. How do you pass something when 20 members of your own party don't want anything? They think they've already spent enough money, and they might be right. We've spent trillions. And we're also going to hear from Fed Chief Jerome Powell, who spoke yesterday and had some stern words for Congress, saying you need to pass another stimulus because debt is something we can handle right now. We have intense borrowing capacity. We're going to pump more money into this economy, Congress. We need you to pass a stimulus. That from Fed Chief Jerome Powell. I call him Superman. He might as well be, and maybe he's the only one that can save the day. So that and more on today's show. We just got some breaking news moments ago, so we'll get to that in our headlines. So let's dive in. Let's not waste any time this morning. I do, though, want to mention our newsletter before we get started. Please sign up for our daily newsletter. This will hit your inbox first thing in the morning. We put a lot of work into it. You can read it in about 5 to 6 minutes, depending on your reading speed. Have your cup of coffee. We try to inject a little bit of humor into it as much as we can. And it's for people that don't want to spend hours trying to read the Wall Street Journal. It's for people that want to get their business news, what's going on in the economy, in your personal finance corner, and you can do it in just a few minutes. So please sign up. It's at morninginvest.com, and we'll have a link to it in the show description below. So that's very simple to do. All right, let's get started, folks, with your headlines, because we are looking at some breaking news at the moment from President Trump just moments ago. I did not plan to have this in the show, but President Trump just moments ago is floating for the first time a delay in the November election. He wants to delay the presidential elections, saying that there's going to be increased voter fraud because of people doing mail-in ballots, which is totally unsubstantiated, by the way, according to the Associated Press. The dates of the federal elections, the Tuesday after the first Monday in November, are enshrined in federal law, of course. This is not something that someone can just change, and would require an act of Congress to change this. Also, the Constitution makes no provisions for a delay to the January 20th, 2021 presidential inauguration. So that's always when we have an election, is the Tuesday following the first Monday in November. It's in our Constitution. Also, Inauguration Day is in our Constitution and would require an act of Congress. Trump tweeting just a few moments ago with universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good. 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the United States, because we're really worried about embarrassment right now, aren't we? Good thing we're not an embarrassment, I just want to say. Good thing, come on. Glad we're not embarrassing to the rest of the world right now. Glad we got that in our corner. He wants to delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote. When will that be? Offering no other evidence of this. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud through mail-in voting. There never has been. Even in states with all mail-in votes. 5 states already rely exclusively on mail-in ballots, and they say they have necessary safeguards in place to ensure that a hostile foreign actor doesn't disrupt the vote. Election security experts say that all forms of voter fraud are rare, including absentee ballot voting. I say, look, if it's good enough for our members of the military, our foreign diplomats, members of the Foreign Service, to send in mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, then it's good enough for the rest of us. Don't listen to this propaganda, folks. No evidence of it. It's unsubstantiated. So President Trump wants to delay the election. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments. Do you agree? Should we hold off on having this election? Give President Trump more time to do whatever he wants to do? And he's worried about these mail-in ballots, as he should be. There's 42 days. And he should be worried about him for the other reasons, which is that he's going to be crushed in those early mail-in ballots. And they already know this to be the case. They already know this to be the case. We're going to show you some latest polls in just a moment and some hard and strong facts as to where the president is pulling up stakes and not campaigning anymore. So we'll get to that in just a moment, along with the stimulus. But I had to bring you that breaking news. Somehow that managed to trump the big story of the morning, which of course is the coronavirus. And coronavirus deaths now hitting 150,000 after the U.S. economy drops now to 3.9%. It's the worst GDP report ever. So let's just go into some of these numbers, Hal. The U.S. economy contracted by 32% between April and June. Devastating official figures that were just revealed moments ago. It was more than triple the previous 10% record decline, which was seen in 1958, folks. The U.S. economy saw the biggest plunge in activity it's ever known in the second quarter, though it wasn't quite as bad as they thought it was going to be, which I guess is a silver lining. I don't know. Gross domestic product from April to June plunged 32%. Wrap your head around that. When you think about that 70% of our U.S. economy is driven by, our GDP is driven by the consumer, and we've seen that much of a decline. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones have been looking for a drop of about 34%, so not quite as bad. Sharp contractions in personal consumption, exports, inventories, spending by state and local governments all converge to bring down GDP, which is, of course, a combined tally of all goods and services produced during the period. This is bad news. This is exactly why we saw the Fed chief, Jerome Powell, yesterday talking about a gloomy forecast and keeping interest rates incredibly low. So we'll have more on these numbers as the day unfolds, but these were some breaking news pairs that I wanted to bring to you this morning on all of this. We do have another grim statistic for you this morning, of course, which is coronavirus deaths. Has now hit 150,000 in the United States, 66,000 new infections, and more than 1,400 deaths in a single day. It's the worst since May 15th. This is not getting better. Let's just put that in perspective for a moment on these coronavirus deaths. Over 2,000 people died on 9/11. The Twin Towers, the field in Pennsylvania, of course, and at the Pentagon. And it changed our country forever, did 9/11. You know something else changed our country forever? Vietnam. 47,000 people killed in Vietnam in combat. 405,000 killed during World War II, Americans killed during World War II. Coronavirus now at 150,000 deaths. More than Vietnam, more than 9/11, and continues to go up and up and up. Dr. Fauci this morning, or yesterday, mentioned we talked about this in the newsletter, so if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, we talked about 4 specific states right now that are having some trouble, should be really concerned. Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, and why can't I remember the other one? And was it Kentucky? I'm forgetting the fourth one all of a sudden. But he said these are hot spots. They need to get this contained or it's going to be an absolute disaster like Florida has been. Texas, also a major hotspot. President Trump there traveling yesterday, campaigning a bit, doing a virtual fundraiser, doing some fundraising down there, meeting with some folks out in West Texas, one of my favorite spots of the country, an area that we're currently building our properties down there for my company. President Trump was asked some specific questions, which we'll get to in a moment, about the coronavirus stimulus package, and he gave some weird answers on it, and we'll get to that in just a second. But it's just important to talk about where he is giving up. President Trump, is campaigning in states that he should have locked up right now. So President Trump traveling to Texas to hold press conferences. He's doing some fundraisers down there. He's spending a few days in Texas. That's a state that he should have locked up. I mean, that's a red state. Biden is now winning in Texas. Well, there's some other areas right now that the Trump campaign is pulling up stakes. And I always say, pay attention to what politicians do, not what they say. If you listen to the Trump campaign, they're doing fine. Everything is burning along just nicely, and they're doing well. But if you watch what they're doing, it's more telling. And what they're doing right now is pulling up stakes in some key areas right now, specifically in Michigan. The Trump campaign has reportedly given up there on buying any ads in that swing state. Multiple media outlets reported on Wednesday that Trump, the campaign, and his super PAC have stopped buying television and radio spots. They're basically saying we're done in Michigan. We're not going to be able to compete here. The campaign was still running ads in other swing states, though, like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, but it's now gone dark in Michigan. Anybody here from Michigan who's watching right now, let me know if you've seen a Trump ad recently. Multiple media outlets saying they're not seeing them anymore. They're not paying for it. The last campaign run was in Detroit, the state's largest media market. The last one they ran was on July 3rd. And they said because their poll numbers now show that Trump has, all but lost Michigan, they're not going to spend the money there. Joe Biden, meanwhile, has doubled his ad spend in Michigan. The Biden campaign is doubling their spend in Michigan. Remember, Trump narrowly beat Hillary in 2016 in Michigan. It was a shock. It wasn't a shock to people that were paying close attention to what was going on and how terrible Hillary Clinton's campaign was run, where Hillary Clinton just thought these Rust Belt states and these blue collar towns are going to be fine. They're going to pull behind me. I don't know what they were looking at, but Hillary Clinton's campaign was, of course, poorly run. They lost West Virginia. They lost Pennsylvania, all areas that Obama had won previously. So Trump narrowly won there in Michigan, but they're giving up hope and turning their attention to some of these states like Texas, where they should have them locked up. Again, pay attention to what they do, not what they say. If the Trump campaign is no longer spending money in Michigan, that's a very telling sign. And if they're campaigning in Texas, that is a very telling sign. You don't waste time in red states with 45 days before mail-in ballots are available. You don't do it. I'm sorry, I've covered politics way too long to know that. That's the case. Here's a Democrat that is dirty, dirty, dirty. A dirty Democrat story for you this morning. Take a look at this. This is a horrifying story. Her name is Senator Katrina Robinson from Tennessee. She's a state senator from Tennessee. Well, she was charged with swindling $600,000 in federal funds to pay for her wedding and finance a lavish lifestyle. That's what federal prosecutors said on Wednesday. From 2015 to 2019, Senator Robinson is accused of stealing money that was granted to the Health Care Institute of the state. It's a company that she directed, according to the prosecutors. And listen to this. According to covering her wedding costs, Robinson was a Democrat from Memphis district, elected in 2018. She was charged with using the funds to pay for her honeymoon and to pay legal fees for her divorce. Also with the stolen money, she bought her daughter a brand new Jeep Renegade. She did home improvements to her house. She bought a $500 Louis Vuitton handbag. She invested in a snow cone business run by her children, according to the FBI and prosecutors. I love how people think they're going to get away with this kind of BS. This is why people can't stand politicians. Florida is about to be hard hit by tropical storm Isaias. This weekend, how many of our Florida watchers this morning right now are battening down the hatches? You guys are right in that cone. Fortunately, right now, it is a tropical storm. Puerto Rico had a total failure of its power grid in Puerto Rico. Now, if this thing strengthens, Floridians know all too well what this will look like. When I lived in Orlando a number of years ago, that was the year where we had those 3 hurricanes crisscross the state. I think I was without power for a month and a half in the middle of the summer, so no air conditioning, nothing. It was trees down through I lived in a small 1-bedroom condo at the time, and trees right down through the roof next to my neighbor's house, and brutal. Disaster. Disney was closed for the first time ever for 1 day. Look how, now this is all fine. Florida can usually handle this kind of stuff, right? They know what to do. In the Keys, they hold hurricane parties, right? They know what to do. However, they've never had to do this during a pandemic. So, of course, we have a pandemic in Florida, one of the hardest hit states. So what is the state doing right now? Unfortunately, this is what we didn't need in Florida. Right now, they're closing down COVID testing stations because they're outside. People are driving up and they're setting up with the tents, to do these tests. they're closing those down because of what's happening with the hurricane. They don't want these tents blown away and putting the risk, workers at risk, standing out there in these hot parking lots with these, these laser guns doing a heat test on your forehead and swab tests. So Florida, our thoughts are with you. Please be safe. It's been an absolute mess down there. I hope this thing goes out and curves east and we don't see it hitting us at all, but we know what we need to be prepared for, and it's coming right towards the land, and at least at tropical storm strength right now, which, okay, hopefully won't be too bad. Hopefully won't be too bad. And, the houses down there are prepared for it. What will the houses of the future look like thanks to coronavirus? This is fascinating. As a real estate person, I'm fascinated about these types of trends. I've always been I'm fascinated by the architecture of different periods, time periods in American history. And right now, we're getting some new architectural designs what the future of real estate, commercial real estate, and single-family home real estate could look like in the United States going forward thanks to coronavirus, social distancing and different things. We don't want to be crammed inside of an elevator together. These are some concepts that the Wall Street Journal featured this week. And here's just an example of what an outside building, from the outside, it doesn't look much different, right? It's not much different, but it's really what's on the inside that is telling as to how this could all look in the future. So here are just a few of the things that would be different. First of all, home offices. Let's start up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Home offices. This is going to become a major part where we would even see built-ins that you could flip down. So a desk that would fold back up into the wall as like a faux bookshelf, because more and more people are going to be working at home. There would be balconies in all units. A lot of people don't use their balconies. They put stuff out there, like they put their golf clubs or stuff out there, but they don't use them. This is going to be a trend where you're going to see people having their date nights and dinners outside. I've seen stories about people who've never used their balconies before are using them now for the first time. I talked to someone in Europe who was saying, yeah, they have all these balconies and now everyone's using them for the first time, thanks to coronavirus. So now balconies are going to become part of all apartment units. It's going to be a major piece going forward, so people can feel like they can get a little bit of outdoors if they can't go outdoors, if they have to stay at home and social distance and not be out with their friends. Ventilation systems. Of course, we've been hearing about stories, the horror stories about air conditioning units spreading coronavirus and what we can do there. So new air filtration systems that would eliminate viruses almost immediately. Windows that open, certainly on high rises. If you've been in Manhattan anytime, we lived in Manhattan. We had windows that just would only open about a fraction of an inch. So they would have windows that would more fully open to allow air in. Gyms, let's go up to the left-hand corner. Gyms, instead of having one big gym, they would have separate gym rooms. You could go in and lift weights in one room, go to run the treadmill in another room. I don't know if they'll have saunas anymore, those 1970s nasty saunas. Maybe they'll get rid of those things. Also loungers with glass dividers when you're sitting down, in the main common areas. They'll just all be separated by big glass dividers so you can't cough on people. Multiple lobbies with elevators, so they won't have one lobby for elevators. And stairs are going to become a really integral part of any new apartment complexes, so that there'll be wider staircases than ever before with carpet and art along those staircases, almost like a cruise ship, so you won't feel bad about taking a long walk. Separate entrances for deliveries as trucks come in, and touchless entry, so you won't have to touch anything when you come into your apartments. You'll literally, just with your smartwatch or just coming right through with a keypad that you'll have in your back pocket, it'll just open the doors. So that's a look. Let me know what you think about that. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are there some things that you guys have done to your homes right now? Try to get it ready for the future of what, if we have to live with this pandemic. We've already seen it in stores, right? Setting up different stations with hand sanitizer stations right when you walk in the stores, making sure that there's signs and they're separating tables and end caps, less items in the store, so there's more space for people to maneuver. But this is the future of homes. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. And one more story here in our headlines I'm covering for you because, I love the weird stuff, as you know. Well, Stonehenge has also been one of the weirdest pieces of rock formation history that architects, archaeologists, geologists have tried to study for years and try to understand its meaning and where these stones came from. Well, for the first time, we now know where these stones are from. They're called sarsen stones. And there was long wondered, well, where in the world did these things come from? How did they get them here? Were they brought from another country? No. Turns out, after a 400-year debate, these stones were carted only 15 miles to the north. They were carted and placed in this space. So Stonehenge, of course, is one of the UNESCO heritage sites and one of the, is it one of the 7 wonders of the world? I think it is, right? So there you go. That mystery has been solved. That mystery has been solved. If you like more interesting sort of paranormal news, don't forget you can always subscribe to my paranormal YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/paranormalpost, the Paranormal Post. So check that out if you want more news on that. How's everyone doing in the chat? We're going to deep dive here the stimulus and what the Federal Reserve said in just a second. We've got a lot to get to today on the show. And so if you joined us late, we had some breaking news off the top of the show. We had these new job numbers. We had these new contraction numbers in the economy. We have, as the NPR has described it, 3 months of hell. U.S. economy drops 32% in its GDP. That's the worst ever. Worst ever. That beats the 10% retraction we saw back in the late 1950s. All the more reason for us to pass a stimulus right now. All the more reason. Because as you know, GDP in this country is driven by you. It's driven by you going out and spending money. And if the American people had that extra money in their pocket, unemployment benefits at $600 or an additional amount per month, they would spend it. They would absolutely go out and spend it. You know, I read an interesting story by someone who was receiving these $600 benefits, 23-year-old, was making $11 an hour. And this person said, you know, I every day would have anxiety. I've been working at this fast food restaurant. I'm making barely any money. I started receiving these $600, and instead of having anxiety when I got home at the end of the day, how I was going to pay my bills, I could actually take a deep breath for the very first time. I could take a deep breath for the very first time, and I could start to do some writing, start to want to create a business, and it allowed me that space in my life to not be so anxious about having to work double duty at this job. Thought that was interesting. It kind of flies in the face of both. You know, the argument on the one side is that, you know, Republicans say this keeps people from going back to work, and then Democrats on the other side say that you know, this doesn't limit people going back to work, and so it's kind of a clashing of those two ideals in a way. I just thought that was interesting. So we're going to get here in. They're doing great with the PPO, Mario Flores says in our chat. Pissing people off. That's right. Welcome, everyone. Ronica says, why can't I hear this? If you're watching on YouTube, you just got to make sure you click the little microphone icon down in the right-hand corner of the video so you can turn on your audio. How many of you are new to the channel, by the way? Please subscribe if you're new here. In that way, you'll get alerts on this on every day when we go live. Just click that little bell notification. All right, let's get started here with some stimulus news. We're going to deep dive this because boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. Okay, you guys can all hear me okay? Someone says, was that a gunshot? No. You know, the wind blows through our house like crazy, and my kids steal the door stops that I buy. And they, for some reason, then they vanish. My 3-year-old steals them, and then so yeah, that's what happens. It's not a gunshot. It's someone who doesn't put a door stop in, and then it keeps slamming like crazy. It was not a gunshot. So someone was not coming for me. Pamela Landrico is a new subscriber. Thank you so much. Welcome. All right. I'm in Vegas, so I might have COVID right now. Who says that? My throat hurts. Green sleeves. Go get checked. Gerald Rimmer says, I just got over COVID and it wasn't even that bad. Pamela, yes, we are getting on with the news. Don't worry about it. I want to make sure that they stop slamming doors so that I can make sure that I can cover this for you. Okay. All right. All right. All right, it is time for your stimulus update on this Thursday, July 30th. And boy, do we have a lot of news to get to. I want to start this hour, though, with the Federal Reserve, because I think this sets the tone for what Congress should be doing. And they're not. They've been a total failure. Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell, of course, yesterday doing their up-to-date minutes on what they are planning for the forecast of this economy. And it was a gloomy picture that Fed Chief Jerome Powell painted. He's saying that all of these coronavirus cases are weighing down the economy, and it is starting to show and take its toll. So again, I think Jerome Powell has been stellar throughout all of this. I think he has been really the one true leader. Unfortunately, he answers to Congress, and they are not allowed really to tell Congress what to do, though he has about 4 times now. And again, yesterday. He yesterday said he called on Congress to get another stimulus passed because we need it right now. He said interest rates will continue to stay low. That means mortgage rates will remain low for years to come. So if you think about buying a house or selling your house right now, this is the time to put some, think about refinancing your home, getting a home equity line of credit, whatever. But this is the perfect time to lock in those interest rates on a new mortgage. They have been pumping money into the economy on the liquidity side for banks, keeping that side of the economy burning and churning, Wall Street doing just fine, continuing to say we're going to continue to pump more money into the economy nonstop. They're not stopping. And then they turned to Congress and said, please, we need more money in this economy, and they need to pass something similar to what we saw back in March of this year. A new stimulus plan that looks like we had in March, get some money in the economy. He did not name a number. Of course, he did not lay out how much, so that's up to Congress to figure out. He said it multiple times. So it did finish up their meeting with the central bank. They continue to pledge to keep interest rates near zero as long as necessary to help the flailing economy. Many economists think that these interest rates will remain near zero through 2024 and beyond. That's a long time, folks. 4 or 5 years of interest rates near zero, which is once again why you should not have your money tied to U.S. currency. You should have your money inside of real estate, gold, silver, or even cryptocurrency, outside of this corrupt government banking system where they can just print as much money as they want and they can pump money into the banking system as much as they want. And yet we're still struggling as Americans because they're not lifting us up and pumping money into our side of things right now. So that was Fed Chief Jerome Powell yesterday speaking. And I think that sets the tone for where we need to be. Now, will the toddlers in the room start listening to the grown-ups in the room and actually pass something? I don't know. It doesn't look likely right now. The Republicans are at loggerheads. They're fighting back and forth with Democrats right now. But Republicans don't even have an agreement within their own caucus, and yet they want to point the fingers at Democrats? By the way, I'm not defending either side of this. And I'm not defending Democrats, but I'm certainly not defending Republicans. They've been a mess. But Democrats passed a bill. So we know what they want. This isn't a mystery. But on the Republican side, they can't even come to an agreement internally as to what they want. Over 20 Republicans right now in the Republican caucus don't want any bill at all. They don't want any additional spending. But Republicans want to continue to pick on Democrats on this, and yet they can't come to an agreement. Both sides are going back and forth. Listen to some of the fighting.
It seems like Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi are very content on allowing things to expire and try to use them for leverage to extract other Democrat wish list items.
The Republicans don't even have a bill that the Senate Republican Conference uniformly supports. The president says it's semi-irrelevant. What is there to negotiate? They have put forth a fiction of a response.
A fiction of a response. Right now, Republicans are hunting for a backup plan because this first bill, this HEALS Act, appears to be dead on arrival, folks. All signs are pointing that way right now. Discussions come as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows have met every day this week with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer. But in their own words, they are nowhere close to a deal, and they are, quote, very far apart. And one of the biggest sticking points right now appears to be this, which is the liability protection. According to The Hill this morning and Washington Post, the liability shield fight is threatening to blow up these relief talks. But that's honestly not the only sticking point. This is one big sticking point right now. And of course, Republicans want liability protection in the bill. That liability protection would have a moratorium for you to be able to sue a business if you got sick by going back to work or going into a business to buy something. If you found out that you were compromised because of COVID, thanks to that business not having the proper screening techniques or whatever, you wouldn't be able to sue them out of existence. Now, I agree with that in theory. This idea that you're going to be able to pinpoint how exactly you got sick, and then you're going to, America is already the worst country in the world for suing people. It's awful. And we do not need trial lawyers making any more money off of our sue-happy society in the United States. Democrats have long supported trial lawyers. They've been a big lobby of Democrats. Republicans have always gone against trial lawyers and always tried to get them, crush trial lawyers. So we see where this is shaping up, right? These two battles here between trial lawyers and Republicans. So I agree with this idea that we shouldn't have people being sued all the time and out of business because someone says they got COVID from walking into their pet store. How do you know? How do you know? Now, in the case of like these meat packing plants and others where we know that certain precautions weren't taken and all of these people got sick at a meat packing plant, Democrats say that's why we have this OSHA provision in our bill, which makes it a requirement for those businesses to follow certain procedures to make sure that their workers, customers, and employers are protected. They think that their bill goes far enough. They don't want an additional level of liability protection in there that would prevent people from suing a business. Now imagine you get called back to work. Now I see their point on this, right? Imagine you get called back to work, but you don't think that that business has done enough to protect you. Like, okay, I'll go back to work because I have to feed my family. But boy, they didn't do anything to make sure that I'm safe. And then you get sick after going back to work. You social distance, you stayed at home in quarantine for 3.5 months, you go back to work and you get sick. And you have then no recourse. Now you're just up a creek. So Democrats want that OSHA provision to be enough to cover it. Republicans don't. Democrats are saying this isn't even a starting point. Like if you don't remove this thing, we're not even going to negotiate with you on this. They have no plans to budge on liability protection. But there are other areas they have total disagreement on as well. Education funding, state and local funding, and rental assistance. All these people this weekend are about to lose their eviction moratorium and they're about to lose their unemployment benefits. And so Republican response to this has been kind of terrible. It's not in their bill at all. There's no rental assistance in that bill at all. And Mitch McConnell was asked about this last night. It was a really good interview with Judy Woodruff on the NewsHour. Take a listen to how Mitch responded to Judy Woodruff's questions about rental assistance and some of the provisions where there's just nothing in there in the Republican side of this bill.
A question about housing. Democrats would ban evictions, continue to ban evictions. Are you prepared, as early as this next week and coming weeks, to see people thrown out of their house or apartment because they can't afford to make rent or mortgage payment?
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of thing we ought to be talking about with the Democrats to try to get to a solution.
Aid to state.
I think that's one of the things we should be talking about and try to work with Democrats to get a solution. Okay, well then why didn't you put it in your bill? If you're so, yeah, that's one of the things we should be talking about. We should come up with a solution. Why is that not in your bill to begin with? So you have zero in there for housing assistance. Zero. Well, no, that's not true. They had $3 billion in there for some little janky assistance, but not what we're talking about here. They had $200 billion in the Democratic bill. $200 billion. They have virtually zero. They're that far apart on their bill. Yeah, that's something we should be talking to Democrats about. Why didn't you start with that? Put it in your bill so we have at least some area that we could work on. Let's continue.
Local governments, Mr. Majority Leader, Democrats are asking for $1 trillion almost in aid to pay these frontline workers, people who are out there working because they have to, despite the coronavirus. The Republican bill, nothing in there for these state and local government workers. Why not?
Judy, as you know, every state budget has two really big items, education and Medicaid. Our proposal puts more money in for education than the Democratic proposal. Education aid is aid to state and local government. And so we think that is an excellent way to infuse cash. In addition to that, the previous $150 billion that we sent down to states, much of which has not been dispensed yet, we would change the formula, change the proposal to allow them to use it in any way they choose, even including revenue replacement.
So the money that had been set aside, they're going to change that provision to allow states to use it how they want. Again, it's still nowhere near the price tag that Democrats want. You have Republican states and Democratic states that have just been bleeding money and have no revenue. And they've had to furlough all kinds of state employees, including those that will have to deal with state unemployment offices to deal with the unemployment piece of this. Democrats are also not backing down on the amount of that unemployment benefit. They're sticking strong at $600 per week. Republicans are, going back and forth over this, around $200 per week. At this point, if you listen to this, they're looking for a plan B. So Republican Senator John Thune said, like right now, we can't get one large agreement. We're going to have to look for a plan B. And there is word that it might end up being like some sort of skinnier, watered down version that they can pass on the Senate side because there's 20 Republicans that don't want anything passed. So might they go for something that's much smaller? Mitch McConnell had said that he would take that FBI building out of the bill. There's also military funding for new aircraft, new jets. We already have a $900 billion per year defense budget. It's a bloated piece of garbage. Why in the world are the military getting jet aircraft as part of this stimulus package? FBI building. Cannabis study money from the Democrats. Money's for illegal immigrants. Get this crap out of these bills. So Mitch McConnell said in a statement yesterday that he would remove this FBI building. That'll be a slap to the White House. We understand that why President Trump wanted that FBI building there. It'd be a catty-corner to his Trump hotel. And that location then wouldn't be off the table for like a Marriott to come in and be competitive. So this would enable them to have a separate location. So that would be less competition for the Trump hotel. So among the other issues that we're dealing with is what's going to happen with the direct stimulus checks. It appears that there's at least some agreement at $1,200 on that part, and still no agreement necessarily on the dependency part. $1,200 is what Democrats want for dependents. Republicans want $500. But there doesn't appear to be any consensus on this at all. So Republicans right now at this hour are starting to look for a plan B. And you hear Mitch McConnell say that he wants to get something done by Friday if he could. He's hoping. He's like, we typically, things happen at the last minute here in Congress. He's hoping that they can come to some sort of an agreement by Friday as these unemployment benefits are done and as mortgage evictions and moratoriums end, or eviction moratoriums wind down this weekend. It's going to be a disaster. Of course, they leave for another break on Friday, August 7th, right? They start a 5-week break on August 7th. I don't know how they're going to get this done before then. That's their summer vacation, even though they already had like 2 summer vacations. We should all be calling our members of Congress and demanding that they stay in town. Nancy Pelosi, for her part, has said that they will not leave, that they are planning to stay in Washington. They are not going home until this is done. We have not heard the same thing on the Republican side yet. Nancy Pelosi was asked about what she thinks of the Republican bill last night, and she said, I just don't get it. She said, I feel like they have no feeling for just the average American, and it's a dereliction of duty. Listen to Nancy Pelosi last night.
All of the services that people need that are provided by state and local. They've said Zero. Zero. It can't be. It can't be. And by the way, it's much less than they spent to give tax cuts to the top 1% in our country. 83% of the benefits going to the top 1%. Now all of a sudden, it's the money. In addition to that, we have the testing, which I described, and then put money in the pockets of the American people. Well, they have a disdain or sort of a condescension toward working people, it seems, because they don't trust how they might use the $600, that kind of thing. Oh, they have money to pay the rent, they're just not paying the rent. Well, that we cannot operate if we are not even stipulating to a basic set of facts.
Disdain for the American people, and they're quibbling over $600 and how Americans would spend that $600. Look, I agree with her on this point. I don't agree with everything that she says at all, but I think that this is an important point. They've sent trillions of dollars, billions of dollars out to big companies. And we found out that a lot of these companies spent, there was a story yesterday about the guy who bought a Lamborghini with his PPP money. I mean, come on. There's been so much mismanagement on the business side of this stimulus, lack of audits, these big companies like Shake Shack and others going on and on. They've got money and bailout money. They just had to send it back. But we're quibbling over how someone uses $600 a week? Because God forbid we help out just the average American, right? It's helping people out right now get through this who may have lost their job, don't know when they're ever going to be able to get another job. 48% of all people who have been surveyed in this latest round of stimulus information have said that they don't know whether or not their job is ever going to come back. Ever going to come back. No wonder Nancy Pelosi had this to say.
People are hurting, that unemployment is high, and that we have a way to address this in terms of honoring our heroes, testing, tracing, treatment, as well as money in the pockets of the American people, being respectful of them.
So that's what we're fighting over, is $600 or the $1,200 stimulus money? When you see numbers like this out today, when you see how our GDP is being crushed because of consumer confidence, our inability to spend money in the economy right now, like this guy, Cameron Mitchell, featured on this thing. He has 50 restaurants in 13 states. He says his business was rebounding in June, but it's dropped off again significantly. People having to be laid off, nobody coming out to the restaurants. It's of course an absolute mess right now, and no sense that this is going to get finished anytime soon. And what will the GOP have on a new, smaller bill? I don't know. I don't know what. I really don't. I don't know what will be in this smaller package, if they can come to any sort of agreement. President Trump down there in Texas, speaking about oil rigs and raising money in Texas. He had some interesting things to say to a reporter about what might be in this next stimulus package. He was asked about this, and I found it actually pretty darn interesting that he gave a response to a reporter. And so I have to think something might be happening here on the Republican side. I have a feeling that something might be going on with this sort of Republican strategy right now, or the White House strategy. So President Trump, when he was asked yesterday by this reporter what he's planning to do in Texas to help energy workers there, to make sure that they are protected going forward, he gave some interesting responses. I'll play that, but then I want to get to the really interesting thing that he said while he was in Texas. Because I like a little conspiracy theory, but I want to see if you're on the same level with me on this. And I want to see if he's playing good cop, bad cop here. So we're going to play this energy part of this, and then I want to talk about the stimulus package piece of what he was asked yesterday, and see if you're on the same page. Or maybe I'm way off. Maybe you can totally say, hey, Clayton, you're being crazy. But let's listen to this energy portion of her
So
question.
President Trump, hundreds of thousands of workers have been laid off due to coronavirus in the energy sector. How do you plan to get people back to work in the oil and gas industry?
Well, they're coming back right now, and as you know, we made a big deal with Saudi Arabia and Russia and saving 10 million barrels a day each, and that knocked it out. And now you're back to about $41 a barrel. And we worked hard on it because it was looking bleak about 3 months ago when this pandemic started for the oil and gas, and now it's looking really good. We're here really almost celebrating in a sense, and a lot of people are going to be hired back. Ultimately, they'll all be hired back plus.
A little momentum, right?
A little momentum.
Okay, so let's speak coronavirus vaccine. When do you anticipate a coronavirus vaccine be widely available to the American people? Before Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving?
I think we're going to have it really very soon. I think we're going to have not only the vaccine, but the therapeutic, which to me is almost, and maybe even more important. And that's being developed right now. We have many, many companies, really great labs doing it. And we have a lot of choices. We're already in our third set of trials, so that's very advanced. And great companies like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, really the best companies. So I think we're...
So the question that this reporter, Katie, from a local affiliate down there was asking, she's asking about Texas and oil workers and coronavirus vaccine, your sort of standard questions. But then she asks about the stimulus package. And so I believe right now that we could actually see a larger stimulus package than we currently have on the table. I think we could see a larger stimulus check if President Trump gets his way. Look, let me say this. President Trump right now is looking at these poll numbers again. He's looking at what's happening in Michigan. They've already pulled up stakes in Michigan. They're not campaigning there anymore. I mean, not to say they're campaigning there. They've stopped running ads in Michigan. It was a state that he narrowly beat Hillary Clinton in. Hillary Clinton's campaign was very poorly run, of course, and they should have had Michigan easily locked up. They didn't. They lost Pennsylvania also to Donald Trump. They're not spending money in Michigan anymore. So what are your Hail Mary passes that you could look to with 45, 42 days before early voting begins? What are some of the Hail Mary passes that you could think of if you're Joe Namath back there in the pocket? I'll tell you what one of them is. Playing good cop, bad cop with Congress. And we saw shades of that yesterday when President Trump was asked what he thought of the Republican bill, the Republican HEALS Act that Mitch McConnell rolled out. He said, quote, "It's semi-irrelevant," meaning he's already seen the writing on the wall that it's dead. He thinks that it's not enough. When this reporter in Texas yesterday asked President Trump, is $1,200 enough money? Here is how the president responded to that question. Listen.
We're going to have something very soon, before the end of the year, but maybe sooner than that.
So do you still plan to get a coronavirus vaccine?
I would do it, yeah. I mean, if I take it first, they'll say he shouldn't do it first. If I take it last, they'll say, oh, he shouldn't take it last. So, but I will take it whenever they want me to, but I would certainly take it. Yeah, it's going to be safe, and it seems to be, it looks like it's going to be very effective.
What about Rep. Louis Gomar? He tested positive this morning. Have you been around him?
Well, Louis is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He's a character, and he's got courage, okay? But Louis is going to be fine. So he tested positive today, right?
He did. So he couldn't make the trip.
I just heard it a little while ago.
Okay.
But Louis is a great guy. He's a warrior.
So are you happy with the coronavirus relief package right now that the Republicans are bringing to the table?
So we're working on that right now, Katie. It's being worked on very hard, and I think probably we're going to have something that's going to be very good over the next week or so. We want to take care of people that don't have jobs, and we're taking care of a lot of people. Very important. We have to do it smart, but we want to be very generous.
Is $1,200 enough for the American people?
Well, we're going to see. It may go higher than that, actually.
What would you like to see it at?
I'd like to see it be very high because I love the people. I want the people to get it. You know, the economy is going to come back. We just had tremendous job numbers, as you know, was just announced. We had great retail sales numbers. So this is all coming back. We had it close it. We had the greatest economy we've ever had. We had to close it up because, you know, we had to do it. We saved millions of lives by doing that, but now we're bringing it back. And that's going to...
Well, I don't know about that. So you heard what he said there, right? Is $1,200 enough? Is $1,200 enough? And he said, we're going to see it. It may go higher than that, actually. I'd like to see it be very high because I love the people, quoting him. I want the people to get it, you know. The economy is going to come back. We just had tremendous jobs numbers and retail sales numbers. But of course, we also got these numbers today. 3 months of hell. The U.S. economy drops 32%. Its worst GDP report ever. Way worse than the worst one, which was back in 1958, where it dropped 10%. 32%. So, again, if you want to play the little conspiracy card here and what I think is happening, I think it's good cop, bad cop starting to emerge right now. The White House is seeing potentially losing this election in a big, big way. The fact that he's in Texas, a red state, campaigning for multiple days, doing fundraisers in a red state, and then stopping their ad spend in states where they thought they were competitive, in Michigan, and even pulling back some ad spend in other competitive swing states. I mean, Joe Biden is from Pennsylvania, remember? He's from Scranton, an area that President Trump walloped Hillary Clinton in. So they're still spending some money there, but they've pulled up their money. They're not spending money in Michigan anymore, and they see that as a lost cause. July 3rd was the last time they ran an ad in Michigan, and Joe Biden has now doubled his ad spend in Michigan. So I think this, and he's touring Texas. I think this is a Hail Mary pass, and if he pulls this off, it could be a miracle. Now, what he'll have to do is convince Republicans to go along with it. And Republicans do not want to spend that money. There are over 20 Republicans right now in the Republican caucus who do not want to spend that money. They are totally against any additional spending. Mitch McConnell talked about this in his interview last night.
Both of those ways, well, I certainly hope not. Neither side would like for that to happen. And, you know, many things around here happen at the last minute. This is only Wednesday, so hope springs eternal that we'll reach some kind of agreement, either on a broad basis or a more narrow basis, to avoid having an adverse impact on unemployment.
So Judy Woodruff asked him that question. She said, in our reporting, over 20 members of your Republican caucus do not support any bill. They don't want any additional spending. So if President Trump is holding out hope that he can then strong-arm Republicans and say, hey, you guys have dithered here. Your bill is now semi-irrelevant. That's what he called it. The Democratic bill is too large. He's described their HEROES Act as too large. And then he's going to be the guy on the horse that rides in with that Hail Mary pass. Forgive the mixed metaphors. He's riding in on a horse and throwing a Hail Mary, and hoping that Republicans will even give a bigger check, an even bigger direct stimulus check to the American people. As he says, it could be higher than the $1,200. And he wants it to be very high because he loves the people. And he wants the people to get as much as they can. And he wants to help those people out of work. So is he going to try to paint Republicans as the bad cop here? And he's able to step in and make a demand at the podium? Because that's where there's been a total lack of leadership. If you listen to Republican commentators, they're surprised that the president has been so quiet on this coronavirus bill. Here's an opportunity for the president to show enormous leadership, to come out and say, we need a new stimulus package passed immediately. We'll deal with the debt later. Fed Chief Jerome Powell says we can deal with it later. Let's listen to him. Get him and Jerome Powell up at the podium and say, look, Fed Chief has said we need another stimulus. Congress, get it together. Then he comes out looking like the good cop. But when you asked Judy Woodruff when she asked Mitch McConnell this question about the stimulus package and whether or not Republicans would support it in his caucus, and that over 20 of them right now don't support it and they don't have the money to do it, here's what he had to say about it.
Well, speaking of a more narrow basis, our Lisa Desjardins reported that something like 20 members of your Republican caucus have problems with the proposal, the larger Republican proposal that you outlined the other day. Given that, are you seriously looking at some sort of slimmed down short-term deal here?
Well, we're looking at all options. Of course, the Secretary Mnuchin and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows are doing the negotiating with the Democrats. But you're right, Judy. About 20 of my members think that we've already done enough. They're deeply concerned. And it's understandable about the size of our national debt now, which is as big as our economy for the first time since World War II. And so I do have a reasonable number of members who don't think we ought to do another package. That's not my view, and it's not the majority of our conference view, nor is it the view of the president. We have divided government, so we have to sit down with the Democrats and work out something, and hopefully we'll begin to do that before the end of the week.
By the end of the week. So today is Thursday, the 30th of July. The end of the week is the 31st of July, Friday. That's D-Day, folks. That's when unemployment benefits officially end. They were already ended on the 25th, but you couldn't add any more to it. So this is when it officially dries up. Eviction moratoriums, all up right now today. So is the president on this playing good cop against Congress's bad cop? And will he be able to pull off some sort of a Hail Mary pass that gets us with a bigger stimulus package than Republicans want? And that something less than what Democrats want? Let me know in the comments what you think about this conspiracy theory of mine. I'll see. I've been around politics long enough. I've covered Washington long enough. I have interviewed Mitch McConnell dozens and dozens of times. I know how these guys work. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. And I'd also love for you to subscribe to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please do so. We bring you these stories every day live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time and try to bring the news that I think you could use to your inbox first thing in the morning. If you sign up for our newsletter, it's our Morning Invest daily newsletter. It's totally free. Just put in your email and you'll get the nice summary of the news of the day and help you read it in about 5 minutes every morning. It'll make you smarter, I think. That's the goal anyway. You can read it over your cup of coffee. You'll get an immediate alert. Once you sign up, you'll get a welcome email. It'll be sent right to your inbox or your spam folder. If it goes there by accident, please just drag it over to your inbox. That way you won't miss another update. So we appreciate that. And how's Grover doing? Where is Grover? With the camera. Here's Grover. What's he doing? Hey, buddy. You want to bury your head in that after that news? I hear you. Stick your tongue out at that news. I understand your consternation, Grover. I hear you, man. Lynn Fredrickson says the president is doing an awesome job. What? You think so? Okay. In what capacity? I'd love to hear. I mean, I'm not being cynical. I just want to hear in what way you think he's doing an awesome job. I think a number of Republicans have said, "Hey, where is the president on this coronavirus stimulus? Why is he not out in front of this?" Here's an opportunity for the president to use the biggest podium in the world with a microphone and say Americans are hurting right now. And he hasn't been. It'd be nice, right? Yeah, Grover was trying to hide. Grover is tired of all the crap. I hear that, man. Jado says, I saw a UFO when I was little. Did you? Stephen Claren, check out Trump's interview before going to Texas. Oh, I did. What part of it? Which one? The one where he walked out of the press conference? I'd rather watch Grover. I hear you. Yeah, he's perhaps more entertaining than these politicians, isn't he? That's for sure. With his one floppy ear. I hear you, man. I hear you. Thank you, guys. Alfonso Cody says, has anyone seen the movie Escape from L.A. with Kurt Russell? No, I have not. By the way, we are working on a whole bunch of new graphics. I'm super excited. The team has just been working. You can tell it in my eyes, I think. We've been working overtime here to bring you a great show. So I've got a meeting here in about an hour with our team. David on our graphics team, on our live streaming team. He's going to be doing some awesome stuff on our graphic design stuff. I can't wait. We're going to have a whole new software graphics package. It's going to look amazing. It's not going to be held together with spit and glue. Hey, I built this show from the ground up, so it's not very pretty. Building these graphics myself, like having to build these myself, and but now we're taking things to the next level. I'm super excited about it. So it's slow but surely, we're working on it. I got to see some of the new logos and some of the new designs on some of the stuff yesterday. We've got our new and improved Grover cam that we're working on. I can't wait for that. Grover's super excited about it. Aren't you, buddy? He's very excited about it. So photogenic. We're working on some new things with our newsletter as well. There's a whole lot of stuff we're working on. So thank you guys so much for subscribing and smashing that like button and being a part of our show every day here. It really means the world to me. And being a part of this great community. Thank you everyone, by the way, for your amazing super chats. Let's see, what else super chats came in. CJC says, overthrow the government 2020. You know, that's something that Thomas Jefferson once said. You know, the government should always fear its people. The U.S. government, we should always fear its people. When the people fear their government, that's when it's time to throw off the shackles of government and to start something new. Christy Slaughter says Trump wants the FBI building so he doesn't get investigated after he leaves office. So it's basically a bribe. That's a good conspiracy theory. But have you ever heard the term Occam's razor? Occam's razor is like, what is it? The simplest explanation is between 2 points, or the simplest. Is that Occam's razor, or am I thinking of the other one? This Occam's razor, right? Is it like the simplest answer is usually the right one? And honestly, that could be it. But the other one is that he doesn't want competition for the Trump Hotel. That's according to some sources. That's not according to me. That's according to different reports on this. That by having the FBI building sit next to his Trump Hotel, that would remove competition from that corner. So a Marriott couldn't be built there, another hotel couldn't come in and be built and provide competition for the Trump Hotel right there. That's according to the reports. Hey, Clayton, John Kennedy from Louisiana is on Fox News flipping out. You got to see it. Okay. Trove Kristen Ron says, how do I become a channel member? If you're on our channel page, if you just go to our main channel page, you'll see a join button right there. I'm super excited. All of you who, by the way, joined our new Paranormal Post channel. I think we have almost 6,000 subscribers over there now. I'm super excited about that. So thank you so much for those of you who joined our Paranormal Post YouTube channel. We have a new video coming out today, so please go over there and subscribe. We're going to be covering the latest on the Loch Ness monster, actually. In fact, there's been more sightings in 2020 than in recent years. We covered, of course, the big UFO bombshell story the other day in the New York Times. So we have a big story on Loch Ness. We're going to be showing you some brand new video that's been captured at Loch Ness from a guy who's lived there his whole life. He's a firefighter, and he says he never thought that he would be a person saying that he believes in Loch Ness. But now that he saw it himself, he says, I'm a believer. What he saw was 12 feet long, 4 feet wide, came out of the water. Anyway, you can subscribe to our Paranormal Post channel if you like paranormal or unexplained news, as I do. It's just youtube.com/paranormal. So come on over there. I'd love to have you. So that video will premiere tonight, the new Loch Ness video on the channel. Grover thanks you so much for being a part of the channel as well, because he likes paranormal news too. Don't you, buddy? It scares him a little bit. He needs to curl up. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been great having you here. We went really long today, but boy, like I said, there was so much news to cover. I'm glad we could get it all in, all of our news headlines. Let me know. I'd be curious, what was your most interesting story on the show today? What did you find? Let me just recap some of the big stories we talked about. Of course, the U.S. economy, coronavirus deaths hitting 150,000 in the United States, President Trump giving up on Michigan and pulling up ad spend in that state. It's a pretty telling sign about where their concerns are. They're just basically saying we're not going to win Michigan. Biden will win. This Democrat who stole a whole bunch of money, $600,000 from state money to furnish her wedding. Yeah. Isn't that nice? What else was a big story today on the show? Stonehenge. Yeah, they finally, after 400 years, figured out where these stones came from, 15 miles north of Stonehenge. Also, we covered the house of the future, what houses of the future will now look like thanks to coronavirus. Boy, we did a lot on today's show, didn't we? Then, of course, we covered the stimulus and everything with the Federal Reserve. That, my friends, is a jam-packed show. So I will get you out of here on that. Thank you so much for subscribing, smashing that like button, being a part of our show every day. I love that you're a part of our community. Thank you so much for sharing this video with somebody else that you think could benefit from getting you their morning business news delivered straight to them first thing in the morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks, everyone. Much love to all of you. We will see you once again tomorrow right here on the old program. Take care, everyone.